back. The Ukrainian community in Cape Town has taken to the streets once again to protest against Russia's invasion. Some have not heard from their families since the attack began. Hundreds of people, including civilians and soldiers, have reportedly died. Our reporter Monique Mortlock joins us now live for an update. So tell me a bit more then, what are the protesters hoping for with these demonstrations?
Tulas, I'll start with Friday's protest. The Ukrainian Association in South Africa, they staged a protest outside the Russian embassy here in Cape Town. And it was a mix of Ukrainians, Russians, and also some locals from Cape Town joining them, calling for peace and for a ceasefire in the Ukraine. When I was speaking to the Ukrainian Association about their hopes for these different types of protests that they are planning, they said that mainly they want the South African government to stop any type of economic cooperation with Russia. They want more of a decisive stance by the South African government against Russia, especially as being part of that BRICS partnership. Today's protests, we've actually seen various protests happening around the world calling for an end to the war. Many people saying that it's up to Putin now to withdraw, and asking the Russian government to stop what they are doing to stop the invasion of the Ukraine. In South Africa, we've seen various protests taking place in different parts of the country. Today we saw a protest in Johannesburg, in Sandton taking place, and it's not only Ukrainians, as I mentioned earlier, it's a mix of Russians joining them, Belarusians, as well as some locals and other nationalities. Today in Cape Town, members of the Ukrainian community, Russian community, and one or two locals were in the company's garden, where they actually stood in front of the Dalville Wood Memorial. It's a statue that basically was erected following World War I, and they thought it would be fitting standing in front of that statue as a symbolism, calling for an end to the war. But one person in particular, a Ukrainian gentleman who I spoke to, he was not only calling for peace, but he was also calling on his Russian friends, family, and Russian citizens in general who are in the country to also stand up to their government. Let's just take a listen to what he had to say.
Spoken to a few friends of mine in Russia, and a few family members that are still in Russia. And there's clearly a big misinformation, and the media represents this war to the Russian citizens as if they are protecting themselves and as if they are protecting Ukrainian citizens against Ukrainian citizens. They are even speaking about some kind of fascist invasion that is surrounding Russia from all over. So this is obviously a huge misinformation, and all this misinformation has been put on them for years, since 2014 when this conflict initially started in the east of Ukraine. And I'm just calling for these people to just be critical about what they're listening to. I call them to go and check the information on international media. I call them to just not blindlessly follow what their government is telling them, because that is simply not true. That is not what is happening in Ukraine at this point. Ukraine is getting invaded by Russia ruthlessly, and the Russian nation has become just a number of puppets supporting their cruel and totalitarian government.
All right, Monique, thank you for that reporting. That's eNCA's Monique Mortlock there, covering some protest that has been taking place in Cape Town by Ukrainians in South Africa who are calling for an end to their country's invasion by Russia. Of course, it follows that earlier protest that happened at the Consulate General offices in Cape Town, also highlighting the same plight, and a number of other protests that have taken place. I wonder what they will be making of the South African government stance, right? The clarity thereof, at least, whether it's unequivocal or not. I wonder if the people who are making these calls for South Africa to speak clearly, I wonder what they'll be making of the current situation, of what our position exactly is on this particular matter, especially around calling for Russia to withdraw its forces, which one hand of government says we have called for, the other hand of government doesn't seem to be fully on board with that part of the statement. Dialogue, yes, But the other aspect, all right, that will